Off top, pandas pee upside down. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. Joined by the wide-eyed Charlie Kravitz. What's up, man? The panda thing got you?
Do they do a handstand and pee, or like they pee out of their head?
No. They pee. Yeah, I guess it wasn't clear. Upside down. Yeah, they do a handstand in order to pee.
Do you know that there are some? I'm allowed to call these people lunatics? There's some lunatics that think that pandas aren't real. That it's just humans in panda suits.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Grand conspiracy.
Yeah, those people are real. They're like flat earthers.
Yeah,
it's like a whole community. I know there are also people who, I just assume that a lot of this stuff is just like internet jokes or whatever. So like people who think that birds aren't real.
That is very real. People actually think that
birds.
Yeah, like, have you ever seen a baby pision?
What?
They're in the nest. That's the whole point of nests. To protect baby birds. It's like an evolutionary advantage.
Oh, gosh. I love summer shows in part, especially when we can do a good, fun personality show and we can have a nice show where nobody's listening. And well, actually, that's not what I meant. I think what I meant is you and I have some opinions that we bounce around in the back rooms that we would never say in front of real guests. And when we have a nice clear spot in the summer calendar, it's the time to do those conversations. And I'm excited about doing those things.
You know the conversation you have with your son when you have company over being like, don't say that?
Yeah.
That's sort of what we do before a lot of our podcasts. Yes. And there ain't going on right now. So it's time to empty the clip on all of these takes.
Clip lizards. All right.
Okay. What? Do you want to start with that take?
No. The lizard take cannot go public. Okay. That is just for me and you.
I love when you do the show for me.
It's the best. All right.
I'll let you. Eventually, our last show, we'll give the lizard take.
The lizard take is not coming out.
On the last show we ever did.
The bad part is I feel very strongly about it too. It's
a great take.
I really believe it. It's like they deserve defense because they are providing a service. All right. I'll let you start because I feel like your takes are going to be more fun than mine.
I still think the Tyreek Hill trade is a bad trade.
No, you don't. No, you don't. That is crazy, but we owe it to each other that we explore these crazy conversations honestly. And I think that the reason why that's crazy is because the result is the result.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think it was reasonable to say the Tyreek Hill trade is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But they went and won 2 Super Bowls
in a row
without Tyreek Hill. And immediately after he left, their offense was pretty good. It's gotten bad since then, but their defense was great and they won 2 Super Bowls. So I think you could push back. I want this to be right because at the time I was like, when you have a Super Bowl window, which they clearly were in a Super Bowl window, you got to wring all the juice out of it that you can. But when you're a smart team that found a young quarterback, it's kind of smart to make the decisions that you can make to keep the window open as long and as wide as you can. So I don't know if I can defend you. It will be a process over results argument because you would say that I think it's fair to say that, I don't know, deserves the wrong word. I don't know what the right word is, but I think most reasonable people would say they weren't the best team in the NFL last year. They weren't the best team in the NFL the year before that. Their 2 Super Bowl years, they weren't. And when they had Tyreek Hill on their team, they were clearly the best team in the NFL.
Right.
Why dismantle the best team in the NFL in order to create an opportunity for you that you might have it again in the future? Right. That's the argument. It's like, this was a mistake.
And okay, here's my case. When you had Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes, you were just an all-time great offense, no matter what. I know the Super Bowl against the Bucs, the offensive line was disintegrated in a historic way. They were missing, I think, all 5 of their starters at that point, and they couldn't protect Mahomes. That game withstanding, their offense has not been close to what it was when they had Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
And it is a process over results thing. Just because Patrick Mahomes is a magician and can take a team that's a mediocre offense and manage it. Like, think about the game he managed against the Ravens. They scored just enough. And then he was like, I will milk these possessions for every single second I can. And our defense is excellent to win games.
Yeah.
You got Patrick Mahomes. You want to have an all-time historic offense. We saw this during the Brady era in New England. The times where they had a Randy Moss or a non-injured Rob Gronkowski, things were so much easier because when you give someone that great, that type of playmaker, to me, it's worth it.
Yeah, I think the tough thing is they won these two Super
and they're going to
Bowls.
win another.
Because
their cap is in a way better spot than the other contenders, like the Bills, the Bengals, everyone. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, had they? Yeah, I mean, it's a great opinion, and I agree with it. The tough thing is with a lot of these opinions, it's like it feels right at the time, but it's obviously wrong because what has happened.
That's right.
And I think that's Josh Allen for me, and that's like the biggest one where it's like at the time I feel like what I was seeing made sense, like drafting Josh Allen there. And like, just be completely honest, while there was a super toolsy guy to get drafted at 10, and he was not very good as a college player, that seemed wrong when there were guys who were very good college player who were also super toolsy, who fell deep in the draft, and that all felt wrong. But looking back at it now, it's very clear that while I may have thought that my process was right, like I just don't believe in drafting guys who don't produce in college. Like I'm not a big, hey, but he got all the pieces. It was the coaches who blew it for him, or the surrounding talent made. Like if you are a first round pick in college, I'm going to save this like wish casting for late in the draft. I'm going to get the toolsy guys late in the draft that we hope can turn into something late in the draft. Early in the draft, I want guys that put up numbers. And obviously that was a mistake. And it seems like since then, guys or teams have kind of leaned in on this. Hey, if the guy got the tools, and it seems like it's been the right thing to do given the successes that we've seen in the league and the failures that we've seen in the league. Patrick Mahomes is another example. It's not like this because that's the hard part, because there are very few guys we can point to that are like Josh Allen, because Patrick Mahomes still put up numbers. It's just he also turned the ball over a lot in college.
Yeah, and the Mahomes thing is crazy too because we found out since that there was a reason. It's like my defense can't get stops. I have to try and be aggressive in every possession. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I want to hit dingers. I want to hit absolute 500-foot dongs with my top 10 pick. And that's what you do when you draft someone like Josh Allen compared to someone like Baker Mayfield, who's a 6'1", hyper-accurate type of guy who's going to, like, he's never going to have the ceiling like that. I think the Josh Allen thing, so much of that got framed because it was unfair that Lamar dropped as, like, a more polished quarterback prospect who was an excellent college player, won the Heisman Trophy, had every single tool, but Bill Polian was out here doing a little racism. And then it was like, well, what about Josh Allen? Yeah. He's not polished. How come he's a top 10 pick? And then everyone got dug in their corner.
Right.
And then everyone in the sports media was rooting for Josh Allen to fail so that they could be right and see, I knew it all along. Lamar was good. Josh Allen was bad. And I think that framed all of it.
You're right. And now they're both really great. And now it's kind of swung the other way where it's like this leads into one of your other opinions, I think, is the criticism of Lamar in the playoffs is probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like you and a lot of people have come to the point where, and I guess I have to be included in this too, I don't want to accept this, but it come to the point where we need Lamar to do it in the playoffs. And there's nothing else. There's nothing else for him to accomplish.
Yeah, he's won 2 MVPs. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
But it always feels like, and there have been enough. I guess that's the thing, is the sample size is large enough now that it's like, all right, there's something here. We need you to take this next step. And it's not only. I think the tough thing for the conversation with Lamar is there's a tier of quarterbacks that he is obviously in and above.
Yeah,
and all those quarterbacks that are in that tier with him, they've done something. They have some playoff resume to speak of, even if it's in a loss, and even if it's in losing in the Super Bowl. But they have some playoff resume to speak of, and it's a product of the company that he keeps. And I think what is frustrating about the Lamar conversation is it feels like people are trying to take him out, or at one point, it felt like people were trying to take him out of that tier because he hasn't had playoff success. But I think that he's still in that tier, but whatever upper echelon of that tier, you kind of have to do it in the playoffs.
Can I see? This is one where we might be so in sports media that we see this, because I have so many friends who are just like, I don't get it. Lamar's just really good. Like, he's not Mahomes. He's not. He might not even be Josh Allen. He's incredible. He's great. Yeah. This gets to a point that we talk about where I'm always like, results matter. ... If it works for my argument. Because if it was just results matter, I would be crushing Josh Allen and even Burrow for certain things of not winning a Super Bowl. But then in the context of that, they didn't just fall out of a coconut tree.
I try to be a context guy all the time, because I think that's kind of our job. Like, if only the results were all that mattered, then there's no reason to download and listen to and rate and review a podcast. Like, you can Google the results. Like, someone has to watch these games and apply the context and not allow people to just say, let's look at these wins and losses. Him better, him worse. That's the point. That's the whole reason why we're here, is to add that context.
Right. And when it goes to those top guys, because we're now talking about that top tier is Mahomes, who's in a league of his own.
Yep.
And then it's Allen and Burrow, who have established themselves as those guys. They've just been better in the playoffs than Lamar.
Because, like, Lamar's been better
as a regular season quarterback
over his career than both of them.
Yeah.
But the difference is they have particular games in the playoffs that we can point to and say, damn, he was good in that big game. And even though Lamar has playoff wins, we don't have anything we can point to where it's like, oh my gosh, Lamar did the Lamar thing in the playoffs, which is so weird, because I think football is one of the sports that doesn't change that much from, while people say playoff football is different, like, I guess the weather changes some, but it's still 1 week of preparation for one opponent. Like, it's kind of the same thing as you're doing in the regular season, whereas basketball is a little different. You got a day off between games. It's a bunch of games. Same thing for all these other series sports. Like, it's hard to understand. And then we get into the stuff that is really uncomfortable, is people are like talking about mental toughness and like there's some hurdle. And we get it with Dak all the time too, where it's frustrating to listen to because it seems absurd.
But the thing is, this is where I go back to where I try and turn off Twitter and actually like talk to people in real life. Like, I know plenty of people who think that Dak sucks. Like, seriously.
In real life.
Yeah. And they're like, he's like Kirk Cousins. He sucks. He's like Jared Goff. He sucks. Even all those guys are good players.
Right.
I don't really know anyone who thinks that about Lamar.
Yeah.
They're just like, they're just like, do it in the playoffs. You want to be an all-time great? Win a Super Bowl.
But that leads me to something else that I also find interesting is that how people do things matters.
Yeah.
Because the reason why these sports fans that you're talking about, I don't want to call them casual sports fans, but
they're
probably serious sports fans, but they aren't like engrossed in it like it's their job, like us, because it's our job. And I think that what rises to the top of their social media is Dak falling short in the playoffs and Lamar doing ridiculous highlights on the field. And so I think that their opinion of Dak is largely shaped off of how we talk about Dak, and their opinion of Lamar is largely shaped off of the indelible highlights that he creates. So they're like, this guy is awesome, this guy sucks, when both of them actually are really great and just haven't won maybe not really. Both are great. No, really. Both are great and haven't ascended to really great because they can't be great in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's levels to it. Like, I don't think that the careers have been comparable between the two of them.
Yeah.
Lamar's way more accomplished.
Yeah. I don't think they are comparable either. And I think, like, the Lamar and Allen and Burrow, like, Lamar is much better than both of them from a statistical standpoint, but we have those big situations that...
Yeah, nuts on the table, go toe-to-toe with Mahomes. Those guys did, Lamar didn't.
That's it. So it comes, and Lamar was unable to do it in other situations, and I think a lot of those other situations, or some of those other situations, we can chalk up to, like, team construction and coaching staff. I think last year was the first time where I walked away from a game like, damn, I ain't got nothing. Like, they had the coach, they had the receiving weapons, they had the better team, they had the defense, and this was like, came up short. There's no defense for it. There's no context that I can add to make it better. The only context that some people try to add is they should have run the ball more, which is like, it's It's tough context to add when we're looking for the quarterback to elevate
It's
a team.
so funny when the football nerds to go back and be like, well, I actually grounded the tape. They should have been running the ball. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Thank you for telling me that it actually matters to have a running game.
Yeah, I could have gotten my my Pop Warner coach from the early 90s to tell me that point. You went and crunched the numbers to come back with, should have run the ball more, got established the run.
What's the CPOE on the I formation, nerd?
I like that you're a nerd who likes to talk bad to the other nerds.
Here's the thing.
You're not a football nerd.
But
you're a traditional nerd.
Also, it's not that I don't like those numbers. And I think there's like a huge thing about like understanding context of football, plays, formations, the numbers to teach people about what's going on. I think there are people in football media who just use it to talk down and try and gatekeep. And that's a huge difference. Like if you were like, when you're like, we've watched football games together and you're like, I am getting a new insight on what's actually happening because I see who's open, who's not open, and you can't see that in the broadcast. I'm like, that is great.
Yeah.
This is explaining, this is learning. But when it's just like, it all comes down to your EPA on this play, it's like, get out of here.
It's not fun either.
Yeah.
But watching games in that way is not a good way to watch games. The way that things look, I think, is a path that we haven't, is one of those conversations that we have off screen that we don't have on screen very much. But I do think that applies to a lot of the memories of a lot of the players that we have, which whether it's fair or not, the accomplishments matter. And I think there's been no bigger shift in the way that we view a player or quarterback than Matt Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Stafford's a guy who, you got excited when I said that. What were you going to say?
Do you know what Detroit fans called him?
What's that?
Stat Padford.
Yeah. That's not fair. It's not a fair criticism. It felt like a fair criticism.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Then, but now
supporting your argument. Yeah.
And this is the point to the context. And it sucks, but it's the world that we live in where it's like the winners write the history books. Whereas like I imagine that the history that we read in this world is largely colored by the people who want us to believe a certain thing. It's the same thing in the NFL on a smaller scale where it's like you get far enough away from it and we're going to look at who won the battles, who won the wars. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to matter that for the first 8 years of LeBron's career, they were actively sabotaging him. And it's not going to matter that Matt Stafford was in just dysfunctional organization. And had he landed somewhere else, like his skills would have been much more appreciated. None of that is going to matter. It's not going to matter that Tom Brady took pay cuts in order to make sure the roster around him was better. Like no one.
That'll be lionized. That'll matter in the opposite way.
Yeah, I guess. But if you're comparing who's the best in the game, I think arguing that someone was married to a billionaire, which allowed them to be comfortable with taking less money and allowing the roster flexibility, like it does change the equation. It means that the playing field's not level, I guess.
That would be sick. By the way, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but as you were saying it, that is sort of why people get on Dak too. And even Lamar, because they actually were both drafted into unbelievable situations where they've had stable and good talent around them their entire career. And even when that is compared to Allen or Burrow, Baltimore and Dallas are not Buffalo and Cincinnati. Like that Cincinnati thing was like, oh my, people wanted Burrow to demand a trade when Cincinnati got the first pick.
I remember.
Yeah.
Maybe I was one of those people. I'm that guy every year.
Yeah.
I mean, because this is another opinion that I only say around you is the draft is stupid. I guess I say it around other people, but I only say it as a joke.
Yeah.
I don't think the draft is stupid, but I'd be fine if we got rid of it and replaced it with a free agent extravaganza where the college players could choose where they wanted to go based on the contract that was offered in the situation they were entering. Because I do feel that this marries well with another thing that everyone knows I sincerely believe is that the fortune of a player, and specifically a quarterback, is largely determined by the circumstances that he lands in. And forcing someone like Matt Stafford to go to the Lions, or forcing Bryce Young to go to the Panthers, forcing people to go to situations feels unfair. And I know it doesn't have to be fair, but it also sucks for us. It's like, remember I said jokingly that I think the NBA should fix their draft when all-time talent comes around? They should, because the NBA is uniquely...
Should in quotation marks. Okay. Like,
The
we'll
NBA
never know about that frozen envelope. Wink,
the
wink.
the NBA is uniquely amongst American sports dependent on their stars.
Yeah.
Like the NBA's popularity goes up and down based on how big the stars are. If somebody comes around that you believe has the ability to carry your league, that means billions of dollars. The idea that you just let some ping pong balls decide which organization is going to get this guy, and you could let this, like, imagine if LeBron James was ruined. Like if he wasn't good enough to lift the I guess somebody else would have stepped, but he wasn't good enough to lift the Cavs into something good, and this like ruined his career, or he got hurt because the medical staff there, because hypothetically Dan Gilbert was cutting corners on the medical staff. Like these are things that I don't know. I know it sounds crazy, but if your business was determined by this, that makes a lot of sense that somebody might freeze an envelope.
Counterpoint: LeBron is bionic.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Imagine if there was someone who wasn't bionic.
Do you remember young LeBron when he would like roll his ankle and he'd just stand up and he would just tighten his shoelaces and then jog down the court like the Terminator? It happened like 4 times a season for
I do
10 years.
Yeah, you can't break LeBron.
Can I ask you a follow-up question about the draft thing?
Sure.
Can you put your NFLPA hat on?
Oh, you want me to put it on now?
Yeah.
You normally want me to take it off.
Monopsony.
I can't take it off. It stays on all the time. When I want to take it off,
how would the PA feel if there was a rookie bidding war and all the vets were like looking at me like, that making twice as much money as me? Like, what would the Caleb Williams contract be if it was just a bidding war for his services?
Yeah, I think it'd be different because I think that Caleb Williams would take into account the situation mattering. And unless you were going to remove the salary cap, if there was a bidding war, the team that could offer him the most money would also be the team that probably doesn't have an offensive line to defend him. So I don't think we would end up in a situation where people would go out of their minds and there'd be some crazy bidding war. But I'll entertain the hypothetical. Like they wouldn't like it, obviously. It'd be frustrating. We saw like the CBA that I negotiated, one of the points that we ended up capitulating on, and it was honestly like an odd capitulation because the idea that you could put a cap on the amount of money that rookies could make was something that like felt like antithesis of like what a union should be doing, is like accepting more caps, but it also pushed more money. As long as you forced a floor for payment, it pushed more money to the vets. So like guys are going to vote normally with what is in their interest, and that's definitely in their interest. So I think most people would be kind of put off by it.
Yeah.
But you kind of recognize everybody was drafted at one point, and they recognize that they have that value, and they recognize that a situation costs.
I think he'd be making $60 million a year.
Yeah. He would definitely go for the going rate of a quarterback. I think, yeah. I also think that we'd probably end up with fewer young quarterbacks pushed into like starting positions. I think your honest evaluation would change. Like, who wouldn't? So JJ McCarthy is worth a first round pick. Yes. Is JJ McCarthy worth $60 million? No. So I think people would change the way they go about valuing these players. So first round pick, you got another one next year. Long-term contract where you're paying $60 million a year to a quarterback. No, you're stuck. You have to know that he's the guy.
But it's also like you can't not play a guy you're paying $60 million.
Agreed. No, I know that's my point.
Yeah.
Is I think that teams would be less likely to put themselves in a situation where they're committed to a young quarterback that's essentially a lottery ticket for $60 million. They would be like, all right, 20. Okay, JJ, 20. All right, Knicks, we're looking at 15 for you. Like, I think that's what would end up happening is they would end up getting contracts that are more similar to what they get now.
There would be an owner that would piss off the other owner so much by overpaying for like a mediocre quarterback in a quarterback draft bereft of talent.
And the best part is that owner would pay the price.
Jimmy Haslam.
Yeah. That owner, yeah, he would get his advice from an unhoused person and go ahead. But that's the best part is like, that's the allure of a relegation system. And while there are plenty of drawbacks for relegation, so that's the allure of it is like, all right, you have the opportunity to go as high as your management can take you or as low as your management can take you. Right now, they exist in this place where they're going to be protected. The rules protect them. They can't truly ascend past everyone else or fall beneath everyone else.
And what if there's someone like a Marvin Harrison Jr., rich family, and he just breaks the system and signs for a lot less to go play for the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Doesn't that also ruin it for a lot of people? Because it's like,
so that's assuming that there aren't a lot of good receivers. Like, okay. And then if the salary cap exists, then there are decisions that have to be made. So we can't build a system. Like, no one ever builds a system to control for outliers. Like, okay, there will be some outliers. Maybe this will come about. My guess is Marvin Harrison Jr. wants his damn money too. He's not going to be like, hey, I want to make league minimum and catch 20 touchdowns. He's still going to want to make a good amount of money, and he should be getting paid, based on my analysis, he should be getting paid top of the league receiver money because he's going to be great.
Yeah, he's going to be sick.
Good for Kyler. What a great addition. He went from thinking that maybe they were going to cut him and they were putting weird clauses in his contract to being like, all right, I don't need to study because every coverage read suggests throw it at that guy.
So speaking of all the stuff we just talked about, I would be terrified to say this out loud amongst other football company. Salary cap's good. I don't want 1920s Notre Dame just winning every year.
I don't think that. Yeah, I actually think that a lot of people would agree with you on that opinion. And I can't take my union hat all the way off, but I'll lift it a little bit and say that it does provide some value, because when I look over at the relegation sports of like European soccer, there are teams that go completely bankrupt, and there are only a couple teams that actually have a chance every year. And you could argue that that's not fun. But I will say, in my defense, I really loved the 49ers versus the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I really loved the Lakers versus Celtics. I guess I didn't really watch it, but like the concept of it. The Bulls versus the Knicks when they were going up against each other every year, and the Bulls and the Lakers. Like, these are things that I really got excited for. I knew that the Warriors were going to meet the Cavs in the finals, and I loved it. And so I do think dynasties are great. I love dynasties. They're fun to root for. They're fun to root against. I loved that. So that is something that we are kind of losing in sports. And I know Steph Curry said that we won't get any more dynasties in basketball, and we haven't seen any really in football. I guess the Chiefs are
it got one now.
The Chiefs are it now, and that's fun. And the last point I would say is the salary cap does create, and now since the NBA essentially has instituted a bit of a hard cap with the second apron, it does create more transient players. And I think we all appreciate, even though I would defend the right of players to take their talents wherever they want, like, we appreciate guys staying places and a team developing a culture and an identity around the guys that you know and love, or you know and hate. Like, that's cool. You removed the salary cap. No one has to leave ever. So there's that. Speaking of which, aren't we glad that there's no salary cap on sports media employees?
Sure are.
Yep. Feels like it, though. Maybe they should edit that out.
Yep.
Don't fire me.
It's a great show. We're the best.
We are the best. 2 great shows. All right, Charlie. Thank you so much. Thanks, producers. Love you, Podfield. We out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.